The mentor part of my job is one of the favorite parts of my job, beyond just the coaching to get stuff done, because, the stuff is fine, but it's helping people be their authentic selves and love who they are when they show up to work and do the work that really matters to them. Helping them get to that space is one of my favorite things.
Hey, Loren.
Hi, Kelsey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
The voice, we got it together.
I sound like I'm going through puberty or something. Oh.
Maybe.
How are you?
But I'm doing well. We're ready for another episode of Campus Confidential.
We are.
And today was a fun one. Tell our listeners who we had as our guests.
Yeah. Well, really, full disclosure, a longtime friend. One of my very early career moves was to Southeast Missouri State University, where I met now Dr. Teri Hall. She was working on her doctorate at the time. Teri is now the vice president for student affairs at Wichita State University, where she's been for about 8 years. At the time, incidentally, she was at Southeast. She was in the research and the fraternity and sorority life area, and I was the campus activities and student center guy. So we spent a lot of time
those are
working
fun,
together.
Fun jobs.
It was fun working with her and tracked her career. She later went to Indiana University, where she got her doctorate as the associate director for student activities and as a coordinator of the master's graduate program. She was the director of student activities at Towson. You know something about Towson University, given where you
Yeah, it's amazing
locate?
how all roads cross.
Small world.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And then she was associate vice president there. She spent 18 years at Towson and, as I mentioned, 8 years at Wichita State. She's an Illinoisan. She's from Illinois. And fun fact, she has the same birthday as Abraham Lincoln, which seems very appropriate for an Illinoisan, doesn't it?
Well, it also feels appropriate because she did reference astrological signs in the episode. So maybe it all
You have to tune in to know which sign, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. A great history and a great person. She talks about her strengths from StrengthsFinder. And I think they show up really, really well in this episode. And, we're doing Tell Us About a Time. And who knew a story about a capital project funding could turn into such robust leadership lessons? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she, as I think about my career and working on capital projects, renovation and construction projects, the journey is lots of ups and downs. They're political. There's staff that are happy, people that are disappointed. I mean, I think we hear all of that in the lesson she shares today. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. And I think we're at a stage in life where people are trying to find joy or talk about joy. And I think she said something like, I sometimes have so much joy, I annoy myself.
She did say that.
I was like, I need to be around you more. Well, I want to be in your life. So I feel like the people that work for her are very lucky, or who are in her lives and
for sure
are coached by her and interact. So should we take a listen?
Let's do it.
All right, here we are for another episode of Campus Confidential. We have Teri Hall with us today. Excited to have you here, Teri.
Excited to be here.
My old friend, Teri.
Old friend.
Yeah.
I mean, how many years have you two known each other?
When did you come to Southeast, Loren?
Oh, must have been 94, I think.
Yeah. So 30 years, right?
30 years. Yeah, 30 years. Yeah, actually, right on the money, 30 years.
So for all of those who remember where you were in 1994, Loren and Teri were meeting. Some of you weren't born. Things were happening.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah. I mean, I was graduating from high school, at least,
Oh, boy. What a start.
I mean, we're here for it. Yeah. So this season, right, we're doing storytelling focused. And Teri, the question we would like to ask you is, tell us about a time you were told no and why that ended up being good.
I was thinking about this and I realized, like many folks, I don't like being told no very often.
Not at all.
Yeah, at all, really. And even as a supervisor and person who works with my staff, it's not about no, it's about what we can do. But in particular, I'm thinking about, Loren doesn't remember, this is how important I am to him, but about a year or so ago, I called him and I have the privilege of working in a beautifully renovated, what we call our Radigan Student Center, named after Jim Radigan, who is a pillar in our field and was a NASPA president and all this other kinds of things. And so beautifully renovated. It was reopened in 2014 and we were going to pay off those bonds this year, which we did.
For the record,
summer.
I do remember this now that you've referenced the.
Well, good.
I just feel guilty.
Now
yes,
that you're feeling guilty
to
about not remembering. Yeah. So in the process, when we opened the building, though it's beautiful, it's too small. We don't have the big enough programming space. We don't have big enough meeting space. And so, and we had some real support from student government to think about, do we do an addition? Do we do something else to bring bigger space for students to be able to operate in? And so I talked to Loren a little bit about, I was getting some pushback about the idea of putting in a tiered meeting room. And it was driving me nuts, really. And so I was talking to Loren and we were talking about the potential of doing a study to really see what we need to do, and did all these kind of things, and finally got to the space where I was talking to my colleagues at the executive team. And it was actually the president that said, I just don't want to do any bonds at this point in time. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be here. I don't want to encumber another president for 20 or 30 years with bonds on a building. So the answer was no. And so that the president saying no, not to bond for 20 or 30 million dollars helped us think about, well, maybe something that we could do is to really rework that theater in a way that saves the building. And it adds to the portfolio of spaces that we would have available for students on campus. And so it ended up, it was a good opportunity to pivot. Being told no helped us think differently about, well, that path was fine, but there are other paths too that might be equally as good, and in some ways save us some money and take some things off our deferred maintenance listing as well as an institution. And so that ended up being a really interesting decision. So that's where we are right now.
So the no that you got, Teri, was a no to you, but it's really a no to a lot of folks, right? It was a no to students who had been advocating. It was a no to your colleagues who'd been hoping you could deliver a win, so to speak, as the vice president. How did you take that no and help others get to a place that it was maybe as positive as you're articulating it became for you? What did you find you had to do as a leader with that no for others?
Well, one of the things I'm fortunate about is our president, Rick Muma, is someone who's really accessible to students and really engaged with students in conversations about fees and increases and all those other kinds of things. And so luckily what we're able to do is really then have conversations between, the president and some of the student leaders about the reasoning associated with that, and how this decision really in the long run helps us get things almost quicker than if we had chosen to bond and do some of those other things, right? By doing things in smaller doses rather than in one great big thing, we might, Kevin Conda, who is our associate VP and director of this building, he's the only person I've ever known that can get students to be excited about fixing a roof. And so he has our students convinced that we've got a 30-year roof, that when the building was renovated, part of the roof wasn't done. And so we have students that see the changing of not bonding allows us then to get this roof fixed sooner for Kevin, because he really worries about the leaking of the roof. So really, so my answer to my long-winded answer, Loren, is to really just bring more people together to have conversations. So yeah, even though, as vice president, we're the carrying of the messenger, but also then to be able to one that can bring the folks together to have those conversations so they understand.
So Teri, what in your background or career history has prepared you to be able to make that move somewhat seamlessly to bring those people together? Because I have to imagine there's maybe been a moment in time you were told no earlier in your career and maybe it didn't feel as well or go as well. So what lessons have you learned from the past that helped you navigate this situation now?
Kelsey, we're a strengths-based campus, and so let me tell you, my number one strength is woo. I'm winning others over. My second is positivity, and I always joke that I was raised a Cubs fan, so I come by my positivity, from the cradle. Third is achiever, fourth is input, five is includer, and so I am very aware of the combination of those strengths, how they work for me and who I am and how I show up to work, right? That I am somebody that more often than not will always see the positives with something, right? And so rather than dwelling in the no aspect, to then see what are the real benefits by thinking differently about what we're doing. And then I'm pretty good at telling a story along the way and bringing others along and helping them see the real benefits of, in the long run, we're saving money, right? By doing it this way, by doing it in some smaller batches rather than $20 or $30 million at a time, we're not only not encumbering money for future leaders, we're also not encumbering future debt for students as well, right? So there's some real benefits with that.
I was just going to ask you a little bit about staff who look to you who maybe don't have those particular orientations. Are there certain tactics you have found as a leader when people don't have those strengths to pivot quickly to a positive outlook? Are there certain tactics you found to be especially helpful that people listening might adopt or adapt to when they're faced with the same kinds of things in their roles when you meet with staff in particular?
I think that one of my superpowers is understanding people and where they're coming from. And so to really try to understand what's going on with somebody and the whys associated with it, and really trying to meet them where they are to then move forward is just what I do. And as a supervisor, I really see myself as a coach. How do I help bring out that talent and help folks? And I would say, as that coach, what I really want to help folks get to is that self-awareness, right? About understanding who they are, what they bring. And, I had a supervisor that helped me understand that even when I thought I was sitting and behaving in a meeting, I was still influencing what was happening in that space just because of how big my big old personality. And understanding that really helped me then be able to help others understand who we are and how we show up affects all kinds of things, whether we want to or not. And we need to own that responsibility associated with it, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to get to, right?
Yeah, I would think of myself as I'm just Loren, but the label and the role and the privilege attached to that always sort of enters the room with me. Yeah. And I'd have to give myself little speeches about that, particularly when I was disappointed. Mm-hmm. When I know this was not something I wanted or others wanted. And did you feel ever, I sometimes felt as though part of my job was when I was going to be delivering news that was disappointing from the president, part of my job was to protect the reputation of the president for that same reason.
Right.
Even when I didn't agree. especially when I
Absolutely.
didn't agree. I'd have to give myself little speeches. It's like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
But my role was to protect the reputation of the president and figure out a way, even when I didn't agree. Do you find yourself, when disappointed with no, managing to that same sort of reality?
Yeah, because it's at the same time I take pride in being a good soldier too, right? Of being loyal and really um, I I need to work in a space where I can embrace the mission and vision of the institution and the direction we're going. I really need to believe in where I'm working and what I'm doing, and so it sometimes takes a moment.
Yeah.
And then there's a little point of time when, I am a vice president. There is that too. Then I have to be reminded that everybody has a boss,
That's
and
right.
bosses get to make other decisions that that's because that's their job too,
Yep.
right? And so,
even presidents have bosses.
Yep, they do. And so, so I would say that it's working with people is the hardest thing we do, right? When I was in different spaces in my careers, when I could just get things done, I am still happiest getting things done. And however, it's a lot harder to just get things done now because of the layers and the people and all those other kinds of things that it's just challenging. And then there's the context of higher education today that I think makes things harder to get things done.
Yeah.
And I think I'm also more aware of, for me, I joked, well, I am a vice president. Well, I am a vice president. And so I'm at a certain rank in the institution with a doctorate from Indiana University, one of the best programs in the country. Thank you very much.
I think so too.
And I know, that's why I'm putting that in there. Kelsey may not have known that. But then I have all those things going on and all these years of experience. And I have a big old personality at the same time. And so I think as I have matured and risen through the ranks differently, I find that I manage my personality differently just because some days I feel so much joy that I'm irritating to myself. It's like,
that's amazing.
And because I'm just naturally that kind of happy person, and then I have a big old personality with it.
That's amazing. And I think there were so many pieces you said there. It makes me think about a couple of things throughout my career. Is I'm a checklist person. Like I like to write. I'll write things down that I maybe am almost done with just so I can give it a good old cross off the list. Cause it just, that endorphin for me is good stuff. But it's interesting as you move kind of, call it up the career ladder, the lists are harder to make because everything is so complex. And so to be able to get that, check the list. And then I always think back, one of my favorite, going into meetings, there was people that would show up in meetings without a notebook and pen. I'm like, how do you do your job without a notebook and pen? And then all of a sudden, the first meeting I went to without a notebook and pen, I was like, oh, this is how you do it. Even though now I still really always have to have something to write with. But I think it's progression and a reminder of kind of what gets you here won't get you there, and how you have to evolve yourself, and then how you bring teams with you. So I'm interested in what is it that you do for team development with your team? Because I hear you saying, right, it's your strengths base. There's conversations that need to have, there's people that you're relying on. So kind of what's your staff development, team development? How do you manage your team to keep them in a space that they can handle news as it shifts?
Mm-hmm. I will tell you that we've had to work on that because, we have a cabinet meeting that we meet every 2 weeks that includes the 4 AVPs that report to me, and then I have an executive director that is on that team as well. And our cabinet meetings became a space for my staff members to just tell me how much they were upset about stuff. And it got to the place where, and, often that was, they would be upset about the lack of resources they perceived that we had. So for me, to tell you my problems, and that I got defensive about that, because I've really worked hard for the kind of resources, and I can count the number of staff members. I mean, probably 20 or 30 staff members that we've added in the 8 years that I've been here. And so I really had to learn how to manage that group in particular differently. So part of that came from really working on my individual relationships with those folks not in that group. And then also to be able to finally say to them, hey, look, I'm tired of you be bitching at me all the time. We're gonna let you do this for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're just gonna have to go on, because, talk about those things that we just have to do those things sometimes. I also have been really working on, not surprisingly, I have some big personalities on my leadership group as well. At one point, I only had Aquarians reporting to me, which is fascinating considering I'm an Aquarian too, right? So all 5 of us were all Aquarians just by happenstance. I promise you I didn't select them.
That wasn't an HR.
When their birthday was.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
It's fascinating. But so one of the things now is I refuse to mediate or moderate their relationships with each other.
Mm.
And so when they're in the midst of something with somebody else, then I make them do that. I will not be in the middle of it. I won't play a mom in this role. They've got to work that out. And if it starts impacting when we are together, then we have to, we also have a large group talking about it. So in addition to those things, Kelsey, we do the fun things like going to Chicken and Pickle and playing pickleball. And, we went to a Top Golf and played golf, and which really irritated me because people who had never picked up a club got a better score than me, even with my pretty clubs. So, I do all those things, but mostly I would say what I do with my team is invest in them as people.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 of my team members are near the end of their careers like I am. And then the rest are in the throes of it, right? In the throes of their most significant leadership role that they've had. And they could go higher if they choose to, but they may not. And so I love that. I love that of really leaning into helping them figure out who they're going to be. I have one of my staff members who wants to be a university president someday. And so he and I have very different conversations about, when you're a president, I want you to think about this. Mm-hmm. And so the mentor part of my job, is one of the favorite parts of my job, beyond just the coaching to get stuff done. Because, the stuff is fine, but it's helping people be their authentic selves and love who they are when they show up to work and do the work that really matters to them. Helping them get to that space is one of my favorite things.
Just to unpack that a minute more, given the topic around no, when you got that no from the president around the project, and did you find yourself entering the conversation with your leadership team on that topic for them to understand differently? For example, the individual who wants to be a president one day, was that a certain kind of conversation about what it takes to be a president and the decisions you have to make versus, say, the person responsible for the activities and the direct student relationship stuff? I'm just curious about then how that might have influenced then those relational conversations, if it did.
Yeah. So I would say, often what we do is have a large group conversation, and then in between we might have separate ones, right? And it's of more interest to some than to the others, right? I need to tell you that I don't like being told no. It's not like when it was decided we weren't going to do the bonding, to do the addition, it wasn't like I skipped out of the office and
you were like, okay, see you later.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
We've just
lost one.
we just did this, had these conversations for 2 years. Don't worry about it. So, but it's the taking time to reflect. And, Loren, you and I talked a while ago too about, I mentioned to you that I'm in recovery. I'm 4.5 years without a drink, and it's the person I am in recovery who's very different and can respond differently. And the person in recovery can say, Teri, it's really not about you. The decision to not do that addition wasn't based on how anybody thought about me or the esteem they had for me. It was about their belief of what was best, his belief as president, what was best for the institution. That was his to do, but it had nothing to do with me. Yeah. And so I would say I am so much better at being able to say those things. I have to remind myself that quite, all the time.
Daily? How many times a day?
Yeah. All the time. And,
yes.
But once I can really settle into, it's really not about me. It's a lot easier place to get to. Right.
Yeah. You said something a bit ago. I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, so correct me if not, but when I figured this out in my career, it made a big difference for me. And that was the jobs are more complex by a pretty significant magnitude, sort of to be hierarchical for a minute, the sort of further up the chain and the broader your scope. And I remember learning this, just to give a little story, at Southeast Missouri State when I had responsibility for housing, and there were students who would run out of the contracts, and hall directors would say no and go to an area director. Eventually it'd make it to me, and then sometimes they'd appeal it and go to the vice president and the president. The decisions would change sometimes going up, and people wouldn't understand. Well, but I said no. Why did they say yes? And I remember thinking to myself, because the context is different, the audience is different, the politics are different, the implications of this or that decision are larger, or they sort of show up as collateral differently. And I remember sort of learning that and learning how to not take personally somebody overruling me, if you will, sort of up the chain, and having to sort of explain that to somebody who was part of my reporting line, reporting to me, who was disappointed. And so when you were talking about the complexity of the president's job, I was thinking to myself, that is such an important lesson to learn in leadership, is that it's not about you. Sometimes it's just a different it's just different context, right? And I wonder if, at what point in your career, is it in the last 4.5 years, or is there a different point in your career where you sort of began to learn, the job is very different, sort of the further up you go, and the context is different, and it's not about me. Is that something that happened for you earlier in your career, even though it's maybe in the last 4.5 years, the reflections clearer for you, or what's the?
Yeah, I would say, certainly when you start supervising, more than one unit, right? That's when it really starts getting more complex, especially when those units sometimes then have competing priorities, right? And so that becomes really real. When I was still at Towson, early on in my time at Towson, I supervised 4 directors that each were were a director for the first time. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the best experiences that I'd ever have, about being able to really dig in with those directors about, who do you want to be? What kind of director do you really, really want to be? And, to this day, I'm still close to those directors, but in the process of interacting with them and helping them show up who they wanted to be, it helped me figure out who I want, really who I wanted to be as well.
What a gift that was too.
It was a gift.
Yeah. It's amazing to sit, you use the word, as a supervisor, you're a coach. And I think back, it's like, I'm learning as much as you're learning along the way, right? The ability to have conversations with others and then think about and reflect. I also think, when you think about the roles as you move up, and in a vice president role, working with a president, or I think about it, as I was reporting to a board of directors, it's like, it's also important that you give them context because they are dealing with so many things.
Right.
How do you organize yourself that you can give them enough context so that we can make good decisions? They have the information to make the best decision in that moment. So I think to your point, it's not like for 2 years and then you were like, okay, no, sounds great. I'm sure it was like, hey, we need to make sure we've thought through. And when you think through all of the pieces together with that person, it feels, at least it's been to me, easier to go back to the team and say, okay, here's where we're at. Here's why we're going to go this way, and we all need to get on board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the more context you give, it seems to me, to colleagues and staff, the more likely it is they can use that context in their own decisions that may or may not implicate you or need to reach other people, right? They just become better leaders themselves, I think, if you give more context, I would think.
Yeah. Early on in my career, I became, I got certified in Myers-Briggs, and then I started trying to pay attention to what the type of my supervisors and those around me were, because understanding what their type was helped me communicate with them better and help me understand their perspectives better and help with that context that you were talking about in terms of, in what way do I present information that they're going to hear it, and that I can be more successful with that. And so I think it's about everybody. Bottom line for me is everybody wants to be seen, right? Everybody wants to be valued for who they are. And if you can meet people at that space, then communication is so much better. And the opportunity to achieve things is so much better because it's about coming to get together, to work together at something, but to respect the person who's speaking. It's important for me to be able to embrace people for who they are. And I hope for the same as well.
Yeah, that speaks to what you were saying, right? Know yourself and know the other people, meet them where they're at, and continue. I think the other thing you're saying is this journey there's no end. That's a conversation I keep having over and over with people, like when you're working with them. Like, well, I just want to get to here. It's like, okay, as soon as you get there, I promise you there's another thing waiting right around the corner for you.
Well, and that's the thing, there are plenty of vice presidents who then go on to be vice presidents in other spaces, right? And okay, but that is not necessarily what's important to me. For me to be in a space and be happy in the space, because for much of my career, I was always forecasting where I was going next. When Loren and I met, I was working on my doctorate at Indiana and then working back at Southeast, right? So that was part of, and there was a spot that I realized that I pretty much worked through my 30s. And then in my 40s, I was still on that same kind of treadmill. And my goal now as I work with my staff is I want them to have good and enriching lives. Work is work,
100%,
and it's always going to be here. But you need to take care of you, and you need to have a great life. And certainly, I don't regret my past, but I don't want to be defined just by being a great vice president. I want to be defined by being a great person that really made a difference in people's lives and had nutritious relationships with folks.
And as an Aquarian.
Yes.
Well, this is probably a good place to end. And Teri, it's such a pleasure to have known you all these years, to track with your career and to spend time with you today. And you've helped us remember that, managing groups is having relationships with the individuals. Everyone got a boss. That's a great, I remember somebody telling me that years ago, everybody got a boss, Loren, and you're reminding us that is such an important and simple lesson to remember. So thank you for that reminder. There's complexity in all jobs, and they get bigger and more complex, and it's important to remember that. I think in any complex organization like a university, and maybe hope springs eternal. So if you follow the Cubs or the Detroit Lions, it will turn around eventually. So positivity pays off. We thank you for that. So thank you, Teri. Really, really appreciate your time today.
This was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad we finally got to do this, and that I didn't have COVID this time around.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The listeners don't know that we had scheduled this once before, and we were all excited, and COVID, like it did for many, struck Teri, so we had to reschedule.
I need to tell you the one thing I didn't get to say that I wish that I did, though, is that I really want folks need to watch Wichita State, that we're on a trajectory that I think is pretty amazing. And, there's this urban serving research universities is becoming a thing, and to have 50% of our students be first generation students. And last year we had 9,000 students earn $30 million in applied learning experiences. So our students earn money in those experiences, and then those experiences lead to great jobs later. So I just need to get my own little commercial in here about we're on a trajectory, and we're going to have great basketball too, but we're on a trajectory to really be an institution to pay attention to, because of the impact that we're having not only on our students, but the local economy as well as our nation.
Well, it's a place that clearly hires great leaders like you, Teri. So we'll the Shockers are shocking. So we'll watch. Thank you.
Time for some extra credit, and I feel we promised the listeners a continuation of this,
and we don't want to disappoint the listeners.
No, gosh, I can't. I want to make people happy. It's my ultimate goal in life. People pleaser, dang it. And I'm only starting to sweat. I feel like I'm starting to sweat a little.
Well, it's because you have to live up to I think you got one wrong on that last. I think I asked 6 or 7 questions and you crushed it. So,
and I only got it wrong because I second guessed myself. It is, when you're on the top, people are coming for you.
It's hot. It's right. People coming for you. All right. I'm going to ask 4 questions today. Okay.
Yep.
We'll just keep it really short. Okay. What 3 countries have been the most popular study abroad destinations for American students for more than 2 decades? Is it China, Italy, and Germany, Germany, Australia, and Spain, France, Italy, and Ireland, or Britain, Spain, and Italy? A lot of choices here. Sorry.
Oh, that's a lot of choices. I'm just going to go with B. I'm going to go with B.
So you say Germany, Australia, and Spain.
Yeah.
That's what I said too. But it's Britain, Spain, and Italy. Those are the most popular stations. Okay.
Dang it, I should have.
Let me see. Let me find another one here. Which field among the following had the highest percentage of women earn bachelor's degrees? Engineering, family and consumer sciences or human sciences, education, or psychology?
Ooh, well, the first 2, that's just, that's so gender biased, engineering and family and consumer science. Come on. We can't pick either one of those, right?
Engineering and then family and consumer
science. Yeah, right. So it's like you're trying to say not enough women do engineering, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
So now you're with education and psychology.
Right. Oh, and that's a tough choice. I'm going education. Seems
okay. I said education too.
Dang it. It's psychology.
88% of bachelor's degrees awarded in family and consumer sciences or human sciences were to women. Only about a quarter of engineering bachelor's degrees went to women. But I had the same sort of mental gymnastics that you did, thinking, okay, these seem gendered. And so, yeah.
Right.
So.
Dang it.
Okay.
Maybe I'm going for an 0 for 4. In betting,
you're 50,
it's just as hard to get them all wrong as it is to get them all right.
Well, you're 50%
see how I did.
So you
see
can
what
turn
I did
this
here?
around.
Yeah. Okay.
After 3 years of loan pauses, what percentage of borrowers were in repayment in spring 2024? Okay. Less than 10%, 80%, 20%, or almost 60%?
80%.
Almost 60%. 58.7% of the roughly 45 million federally managed loan borrowers were in repayment. So 60%. All right, let's do one more.
All right.
Among the 10
for 3. I'm on a roll.
among the 10 public doctoral institutions with the highest average pay for full professors, how many were members of the University of California system? 4, 9, 8, or 3?
The faculty. So there's 10 public is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the number you're asking me for is the number of
how many of the 10 public were let me try this again. How many of the 10 public doctoral institutions among the 10 public doctoral institutions, among the 10 with the highest average pay, how many were part of the University of California system? So when you look at the country, among the 10, how many were members of the University of California? How many campuses?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, give me my choices again because I do not remember them.
3, 4, 8, or 9?
4.
Well, I said 4 also, but it's 8. 8 University of California campuses made the top 10 for highest average pay last year.
Pay those people. So you're saying only 2 schools outside of California are paying professors
in the top 10. California's expensive, but I was a little surprised by that too. So that's it.
All right, over 4.
I guess largely the same, actually, on many of these today. So I think you got 1 out of 4.
I wonder what that says about us. I don't know.
Are you an Aquarian?
I am not. I'm a Scorpio. What are you?
Cancer.
Oh, that's my mom.
I don't know anything about zodiac signs, though, so you're going to have to.
I only know enough to go to the Google machine and be like, how do Scorpios and Cancers work together?
Corey, what are you?
I'm a Leo, but I'm the most non-typical Leo ever, but I'm Leo.
Leos and Scorpios aren't supposed to get along, I guess, but my life is surrounded by Leos. This is why I like you a ton, I think.
Yeah, my wife husband, and my oldest are also Leos, yeah.
They are the Leo-Leo combo.
Yeah, Enneagram and MBTI and Strengths. We just do Zodiac. That's how we get by life. All right, Loren, well, we covered a lot of things, and I guess we'll find another quiz for the next extra credit.
Better
luck next time.
All right, until next time.
All right, bye.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey, Harmon, Finn, and Loren and Rullman.